Does anybody remember when they suddenly gain consciousness of what's happening as a child? I clearly remember the moment I gained consciousness. What's really happening around me when I was a child. I don't know how old I was, but the moment is that I was sitting in the back seat of my parents' car, looking out the window. Suddenly, my father applied the brakes because a deer jumped out in front of the car. After that moment, suddenly I felt like, hey, it's me. And suddenly really alert of my surroundings after like being in a no memory mode since birth. Did anyone went through this kind of experience? I actually remember mine, and nobody around me has that same experience for some crazy reason. I remember being in my kitchen, probably trying to make myself a sandwich or watching the oven, and the rest of the family was hanging around in the next room. It felt like I had suddenly had an indesirable moment of clarity and realized I was me. I remember blank staring at the wall for what felt like minutes, looking at my hands, arms, trying to wrap my head around it, and was confused why I felt like I had just woken up in someone else's body with their memories. I knew my mom was my mom and my family was my family. So the logical conclusion I came to was that this was a religious thing, something to do with angels, but I can't remember that thought fully. I also wanted to run up to family and say hi or I love you, one of the two, and didn't because that would have been strange. I think about it sometimes, and it's so damn interesting that someone fully gains awareness of themselves just like that on a dime. And thanks for giving me an excuse to tell someone. But I had a similar moment when I was 10. I was in the foster care most of my childhood, and when I was 10, I was with a family and had been with for a while. The sun was shining, my mother figure was cleaning, and I wanted to help. But she said no, just go be a kid. And I wasn't sure what to do. So I just hung out in the sun. Then suddenly my brain clicked like waking up. And I just knew in my gut that I was safe. I think I was frozen my whole life before that. Before that, there are too many memories and no actual decision making. Just reacting and existing and doing what I was told until that click happened. I had a few of those moments in early life. Unfortunately, I can't remember the feeling for most of them. The one time I can remember kind of clearly was when I was like 3 years old. My dad had been dating my to be stepmom for a while at this point, and he sat myself and my brother down to explain it to us. I don't remember the conversation itself, but I latched onto the idea that this lady had her own kids. In my head, it went something like, I'm a kid and they're kids. I don't know them though. How are we all kids? Are we the same kids? No, I'm not those kids. So I'm me, and they're not me. If I don't know them, then how are they real? If they don't know me, what have they been doing all this time? I puzzled and puzzled over it a long time. Days on end, if I remember correctly, eventually coming to a conclusion that people exist outside of my awareness. So cute. I ain't gonna lie. I love the innocence of children. It is so amazing how innocent they are. This is such a cute little story. Yes, I'm glad you brought it up. I was in my crib and it was a time of great chaos, drama. Without going into details, grew up in a turbulent home. And I suddenly snapped into myself like, well, you know the show Quantum Leap? It was like I was thrown into consciousness and felt the baby equivalent of what the fuck? Here I am. Edit to say. I think a lot of people in the comments are describing a moment when they struggled with or realized autonomy, but I took your post to mean the very first moment you stepped into consciousness and have held memory since. Sort of a square one in the game of life. I remember so much in detail from my childhood that was possibly due to extremely troubled surroundings where I had to constantly be on my toes. Moments where it kind of clicked. I was less than 2 to 3 years old. I was in my mom's bed and I saw a spider the size of my mom's pillow. I started freaking out, screaming and crying. My family rushed in. I told them about the spider. I showed them with my hands how big it was, and my mom immediately started comforting me, telling me it was just a dream, and tore apart the bed to prove it. I was confused at first. The dream blended perfectly with reality. Then kinda had a moment realization that I can dream. Not everything I see is real. And wondering if I was still dreaming. I was a lucid dreamer for the most part after that. When I was about 5, I realized I could hear myself in my head and imagine images too. I just remember playing by myself quietly and out of nowhere being like, how can I hear myself? Am I controlling this? And said random words in my head to test it. Then I tested pictures. I made green number 3 jump across my inner sight, something like you used to see in Schoolhouse Rock. For some reason, I still think about this moment often. Another time, when I was like 4 to 6, I remember my uncle showing me the moon and the stars and planets through a telescope. He told me that there were more stars than I could possibly imagine, all with their own planets, probably with their own humans on them. So I'll never be alone. It blew my mind. I felt a profound connection with space at that moment. I felt like the stars were looking back at me, like the sky was alive. He went into telling me how he loved me to the moon and back, the stars and back, etc. He also told me that night I won't be a kid forever and I should cherish every moment I can. After that, I frequently have moments I would think, I need to remember this. And sometimes it would be mundane things, like playing with toys or tracing patterns with my eyes on the ceiling. Other times will be life changing things, like his funeral, or really good things like concerts. I still kind of do that to this day. I also remember looking at my hands a lot, being amazed that I could move them. Until I started reading these, I remember times that I actually went through this too. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And we're going to end things here, guys. If you want me to circle back on this, because there are a lot of responses on this particular thread, then let me know, and I definitely will. And I'm curious to know, like, did any of y'all have realizations? And, like, was this opening to you as well, like, to remind you of your own times of this? Let me know in the comments below. And thank y'all for sticking around to the end. Y'all have a good rest of y'all day, and God bless.